Welcome, everybody, to the Baseball Blueprint Podcast, your home for all things player development, where we highlight some of the best instructors in the game. Today, we're honored to have Coach Butch Chafin here. Butch, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I love doing this.
So, Butch, you've had a ton of experience in the game, and I think one of the highlights that we see from the outside looking in is your involvement with USA Baseball. Can you take us a little bit into the backstory about how that got started and some of your experiences there?
I've scouted and coached with USA for about 18 years, and it's funny. I tell everybody wants to know how they can get in, and hey, I'd love to do USA Baseball. And I just, in my mind, I kind of chuckle because I started out 18 years ago just because I knew somebody, and they said, "Hey, come over here and do this. We think you'd love it. It's just baseball all day." And I was like, "I'm in." And I got over there, and it was the 4 national team staff members and 4 guys on what they call the task force. And basically, one member from each task force sat on the field, ran the umpires' balls, and we kept little notebooks, and we were supposed to take notes. But basically, it was like making sure the game ran smoothly and run down foul balls. And then it just kept graduating and graduating. 3 years after I started, I made my first staff. And I'll be honest with you, that's one of the most chilling things ever because they let the pitching coach go in the middle of what they call the Tournament of Stars. So I was on a field. It was late in the week. It was late in the day. I was wore out because you're working like 18-hour days. And I was in a chair and I had sunglasses on. And I'll be honest, I wasn't asleep, but I was almost asleep. And guy tapped me on the shoulder and he said, at the time, the director wants to see you. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to be fired because they think I'm asleep. So I get up, I go to an empty field. He's sitting all by himself in the dugout and he goes, "Hey man, we just made a change. Do you want to be the pitching coach?" And I was like, the pitching coach. And he goes, "Yeah, you want to be the pitching coach for the 18U national team." And I mean, it was that, like, when you get pulled over by the police and you have that chill and it runs up your back and you're kind of numb and it's surreal. It was that. And I was like, yeah, I need to ask my wife. And they go, "We need to know in an hour." So they named me the pitching coach. They flew me home for 24 hours so I could take care of everything. And then we went on a 6-week tour. And, man, I'm telling you, if you've ever been on a staff, you always want to be on another one. And it was just a surreal feeling. I still remember players from there, players we evaluated when they were kids. It was unbelievable.
That's special. Wow. Okay, so when you're going through that evaluation process, right, and you're starting to identify some players who could potentially be, Team USA guys, are there certain maybe non-physical characteristics that you're looking for in those guys?
Oh, no doubt. The big joke that I think I'm the one that started it is you got to pick guys that you're sure won't force Marines to rescue you from a third world country. So if that guy has a look in his eye like he's going to throw a water balloon, off the 15th floor, you can't take that guy. And all kidding aside, the character piece of it is huge and can never be overlooked because, the national team, there's a 12U national team, and I've been on staff for that. I've been on staff for the 18U national team. You legit are taking guys to another country. They're going to have to stay in a hotel with a roommate they may not know. The discipline it requires to show up at meals on time, to be, you miss the bus in Taiwan, that's about a $75 bus ride across town on your own in uni, and you don't want to do that. And the character piece has always been, like, huge. And here's the forgotten thing. Everybody thinks you take, like, a 20-man roster, you take the 20 best players. Well, you've coached long enough to know that that's a bad formula. So you pick all your starters, you pick the utility guy, you pick the backup catcher, and those backups are so important because they're going to have to play probably in the most important moment, and they're going to get thrown into it, but they've got to be willing to sit around for 2 or 3 games and never get in, and then all of a sudden they're the pinch hitter in the bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, 2 outs. So I've always said you're only as good as your backups, and you're only as good as that emergency catcher.
Yeah, and you look at like some of the scheduling for a lot of these World Championships, series. Like, you guys are playing a ton of games. I mean, you got to think the depth has got to be not just from a strategy piece, but like these are young players playing at the highest level of baseball. Something definitely has a chance of happening, and having that depth. Not only is it helpful strategy wise, but you've got to have guys who can go win a championship in those spots. So that's awesome. In your experience, kind of in that space, what are some of the biggest difficulties that you've had personally?
Well, you got to know this. The United States, we invented baseball. We're good at baseball. The world knows we're good at baseball, and they're always trying to catch us. And the governing body for baseball internationally is not in the United States, and they love it when the host country can have success, and they get really tired of us winning. So I'm not saying that they do things to prevent us from winning, but they don't make it easy. You'll have a 10 o'clock game. You got to be there at 8:30. The cafeteria opens at 9. So, you have mini Pop-Tart breakfasts and things like that. You can't just go through the drive-through with the national team. A police escort pulling through the drive-through. It doesn't always work. And if you're in Taiwan, they don't use mayonnaise. They use tartar sauce on chicken sandwiches, and that freaks out that kid from Kansas. You got to account for everything. And but I personally think that when there's a lot of adversity going on, that's you find out if you have a good national team or not.
That's awesome, man. Wow. And so when you're going through the identification process for this, and just for those players who haven't had a chance to experience this, are they working through like an identification series and they get promoted to a high performance program and then more identification? What does that route look like to getting involved with that team? USA Baseball
is financed by Major League Baseball. So when you go to a game, $1 of your ticket's going to USA Baseball. And then USA Baseball is referred to as the 31st Major League Baseball team. So we have to play by Major League rules. We go international. Base coaches have to wear a batting helmet. No other country has to do that. We play by different rules. And by that, I mean, you roll out and play the Mexico. You play Mexico's 18U team, and their first 5 hitters have already had a year of professional baseball. And our guys are juniors in high school. And so, there's a lot of different rules that go on internationally. I've been with USA 18 years, 3 national teams, tours, and I'm still trying to figure out what the balk is. Can you do this? Can you do that? Why does Puerto Rico get to do that and we can't do that? There's a lot of that going on, and that's just become the norm. It's hard, but USA, there are so many different avenues and roads you can go down to get to a national team, but we don't have the budget. I say all that about being the 31st Major League team. We don't have the budget to go send one guy to watch one guy in Minnesota. It's word of mouth. It's bring the players to us, put them in front of scouts. And, there's the East Championships. There's the West Championships. We're run by USA Baseball. There's the NTIS, which is different areas of the country have coaches, and they have tryouts, and they form a team, and they bring them to North Carolina, and we scout them there, and we pick so many that will move to trials. Usually, more than likely, and it is what it is. It's expensive to be a baseball player in America, and now you throw in the sliding mitt. That's another $5,000 for a sliding mitt or something like that. You got to have the gear. You got to have access. You got to play regular. That's the beauty of our game. Is you got to play it all the time, and if you're not playing it, you're preparing to play it, you're practicing it, you're training, you're lifting. And, in the United States, we're pretty darn good at it. And it's because we're blessed that so many kids love to play baseball.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's a special space, and I think when you get those kids who have a passion for this and they start to get more involved with the team, do you start seeing some common problem areas that you need to address with these higher performers?
No doubt, and it has a lot to do with at the 12U level, at the 15U level, they use aluminum bats. And then you start getting into, 16, 17, 18, and they switch over to wood. During their high school season, they're using aluminum. So they're going back and forth between what they train with. And you know this as a good baseball coach. There's a big difference with hitting with a wooden bat, hitting with an aluminum bat.
Yeah.
That wood can be a big equalizer. And, a lot of the summer tournaments and internationally, they'll play with wood because it makes for a faster game. It's easier to get outs. You can't hit a ball with a wooden bat, and get that flare to right or something like that without snapping the bat. When you hit with a wooden bat, you're getting instant feedback on, did I barrel that? Whereas with an aluminum bat, you have handle shots that'll go in the gap and off the end of the bat that'll go out of the ballpark. Just to say this, that the example that I'm using now is there's a kid, and the kid's name is Kason Cunningham. And Kason Cunningham, he's 17 years old. He's going to the University of Texas, and that kid tried to make national team 2-3 times a year from the time he was 12 until this year, and he finally made it. He was the last cut last year, and I grabbed him going out the door, and I said, Kason, you're a tremendous player. You got one more shot at this, and I think you can do it. And he goes, I can do it, coach. And just rededicated and made himself the best version of himself. And this year he was the shortstop on the 18U team. He was the MVP, of that qualifying tournament in Panama. And I sent him a text, and he goes, I never forget what you said as I walked out the door. You grabbed me and said, become the best version that you can be of yourself. And that really hit me hard. Nobody ever said that to me before. And, I'm not saying I did it, but that kid dedicated himself and made himself a player. And, he's that typical, he's like 5'9", 185 pounds. He can run. He can move the ball around with the bat. He's a plus glove. And the kid will play in the big leagues. And he has made himself a player. He's my poster boy right now.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, and you've done it for long enough. I'm sure you've got stories on stories of these guys, and it's so awesome talking to someone who's been able to be in that space for so long. When you're going about your instruction, and again, you're surrounded by some of the best minds in baseball, working with USA Baseball. What are some instructional pieces that you've maybe adjusted throughout your career, or maybe it's something that you've picked up or kind of tossed away and said, we've outgrown that?
I just think I think baseball's really hard, and the older I get, the more I realize that. And I went through a period in my coaching life where I was like, oh my gosh, how's he swinging and missing on that pitch? And then somebody would lean over and go, Coach, that's a 96-mile-an-hour two-seam fastball with bowling ball sink. And I'd be like, oh yeah, that's right, baseball's hard. It's the greatest game because it'll challenge you and it'll humble you, but it'll give you a high that, no drug ever could. And I just think in my coaching life, I always try to remember when I'm evaluating, baseball's really hard. And then when you see somebody do something that's special, man, it just jumps at you and you're happy for that kid. But I also think a lot of people forget this, and players forget this. Your preparation is going to starve your fears. So if you're prepared, you're less anxious, you're less fearful. I know as a coach, I've become a fearless coach. Like, I used to worry when I was younger that, if I send this runner and he gets thrown out, people are going to think I'm dumb and I'm a bad coach. Well, I grew past it because I remembered baseball's a game, and the winner is usually the guy that's the most fearless. And so now I'm like, this catcher's a 192, whatever, get a good jump and go. Let's take this back. And, I've become that guy. And I encourage all coaches, become fearless. And you become fearless if you're super prepared.
Yeah, and I think that might be akin to revisitism. that confidence in the preparation. I like that.
That may be where I heard it, and he was such a great man and gave me so much wisdom personally. And conversations with him, it was like talking to your wise uncle. And he could put you in your place, but man, he dispensed a lot of great knowledge.
That's awesome. And then working in that space, I bet you've met some incredible characters along the way. Are there some guys that you feel like have really helped sculpt your coaching identity, or maybe even guided your technique, instruction, and stuff like that?
There's no doubt. And, I encourage everyone. I'm in a coaching group that has about 15 guys, and we're on WhatsApp, and we text, and we have group texts, and we communicate daily, and we share information. We rip on each other and make fun of each other. But every now and then somebody will go, hey, what do you guys have on a push bunt? And all of a sudden, all these techniques and mechanical things come flying in. And I don't know where I'd be without them. Just people I've met over the years, coaches that have I think it's a God thing that I've had really good coaches in my life. Coach Corbin, I'm down the street. I'm about an hour away from Vandy, and Coach Corbin, he and I have had multiple conversations, and he is like talking to your uncle that is from New Hampshire, and it's slow and it's positive and it comes out and it's complimentary. It's just. There have been so many. Coach Garrido, I went to his camps. I was born in California, so before anybody was doing camps, he was trying to raise money at Fullerton, and I would go to camp, and there'd be 20 kids there, and he'd be there, and there'd be 4 or 5 players, and they'd throw us batting practice, and that's the first time I heard a curse word was at Cal State Fullerton camp, and I thought, man, I'm in the big leagues now. I'm 8. I'm in the big leagues. So, If coaches that don't get out there and make themselves vulnerable and walk up to someone, I feel sorry for them, because we go to the national convention and I'm I've got to get in there and hear this speaker. And then you bump into 50 people along the way. And all of a sudden it's 5 hours later and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten breakfast and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But yeah, you got to put yourself out there and you got to be willing to humble yourself and collect information. I learned from guys. I'm 61 years old, and about 3 days ago, I learned from a 15-year-old kid. He taught me a better way. And I was like, you're the man. And he was like, I can't believe that you're going to take what I'm saying. I'm like, why wouldn't I? You're playing. You feel it. I appreciate you telling me that. But, yeah, you got to put yourself out there, and you just got to gather. You got to gather as much as you can.
That's awesome. Wow. Okay. So gearing off more in towards the competitive side of your career, is there a certain kind of space of games with one of the national teams you've been with that is just more memorable, something that hits so hard because you had that experience with that group?
I tell you, I learned a valuable lesson. 2017. Ashley Bratcher, who's the general manager of USA Baseball, she goes, hey, will you do me a favor? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Ashley Bratcher, by the way, she is probably #1 female in all of baseball. She knows baseball. She knows how to lead. She knows how to organize. And in 2017, she goes, hey, will you do me a favor? And if Ashley asks for a favor, you do the favor. And she goes, I don't know how to say this. And I'm like, Ashley, I've known you since you were 20 years old. I've known her since she was an intern with USA Baseball. Now she runs it. And I said, we've got this relationship. Just say it. She goes, I need an older guy to go with the 12U team as an assistant coach. And I went, I'm your older guy.
Yeah.
So I thought, I said yes because it was Ashley. And then I started thinking about it. And I'm like, good Lord. I've signed on to be an assistant coach on a little league team, but I'm going to have fun with it, see where it goes. And we went to Taiwan, and David Sharp was the manager, and I was the bench coach and the hitting coach. And I'm going to tell you something. Those 12-year-olds who last year they were draft eligible, and kids like Ralphie Velasquez got a $2 million bonus with the Cleveland team. And a lot of those guys got drafted last year. I learned that you can be 12 years old, take kids out of the country to Taiwan. That was the most mature group of kids I've ever been around at any age level. And, I was a high school coach for almost 30 years, and I've never seen maturity out of 12-year-olds like that. They were all business. They had fun. There was joy. They celebrated each other. They got their work in. I've never seen work like that. Like when we worked, those kids got after it. They did exactly what they were told to do. And when we brought home a gold medal and beat Chinese Taipei, in the host country in front of 15,000 people. And I was like, the most worried I was, we got on the bus, had a police escort through town, and the place was just packed. And we got to the stadium, and I went, good Lord, Sharpie. And it was just 15,000 people in the stadium an hour before the game. We're trying to take BP in front of 15,000 people, and they've got horns and drums and all kinds of dancing girls. And the maturity those kids showed, and they were selfless. Our backup second baseman put shin guards on and went and caught bullpens, and nobody told him to do that. And he just did it. And we did stuff. The kid that started the game, we were out of pitching. And, when you do international play, you don't set your pitching from the gold medal game. You set your pitching from the semi game, and then when you get to the gold medal game, you just do whatever.
Yeah.
And we threw a kid against a third world country, and he couldn't throw strikes. And the night before, we were trying to figure out who are we throwing. And there was a knock on the hotel room door, and it was the kid. And he was like, I want the ball tomorrow. He said it a little more colorful for a 12-year-old, but he was like, I want the ball tomorrow. And he goes out and he throws 4 no-hit innings to hold off Taipei while we get a few runs, and we end up winning the gold medal. And that team taught me, no matter what age, that if you push maturity when you're coaching, you've got a chance. Because if they're mature, they'll prepare in a mature, positive way, and you've got a chance.
Awesome. Wow. So one of the more kind of niche areas I wanted to dive into here was mental game, and I think us talking about Ken has obviously led into that too. But has that process from just a curriculum standpoint in USA Baseball changed over the years, or has that been pretty consistent with how that's been taught? Every coach has his own way, and every team has its own identity, and different coaches build teams differently. Some are going to play the short game. Some are going to play the run game. I've been on staffs where the head coach was like, every position player we have, except for the catcher and the first baseman, need to be able to get a bag. So they play the speed game. Other guys are like, it's a 20-man roster. I don't care. Pick 9 starters, and we're going to pick power arms. And as we get into this 2024, when agents and advisors, that's really factored into it. There was a kid this year that should have been on the national team, but his advisor said, you can throw 1 time and you can throw 2 innings. Well, you can't take that guy. You really tie your hands. And a lot of people are like, you didn't pick the best team. Well, they don't know what we're dealing with behind the scenes. Yeah. And, we've had a lot of kids. There were kids picked in the first round of the draft last year whose advisor said, no, you can't play USA Baseball. You can't leave the country. It'll drive your stock down. And I'm like, that's awful advice. Anytime you can play for your country, you ask anybody. The first 2 kids I ever picked up at the airport for USA Baseball were Mike Moustakas and Freddie Freeman, and they were 17 years old. And if you ask them what it means, to wear a jersey internationally, Freddie's mother was Canadian, so he played for the Canadian team in the Classic one year, and everybody understood. But you want to wear that jersey internationally. The feeling you get. I know I wear a cover. Anytime I coach, I wear a BP top. It's just comfortable. Hides my fat, my love handles or whatever. But when you go international, man, you don't miss an opportunity to put that jersey on. Yeah, wow. And it's funny you mentioned that. So I've been able to, just by sheer dumb luck, get involved with Coach Corbin and helping out in their prospect camps in the summer. Looking at one of the guys who I consider is like the top 5 best coaches in college baseball right now. He has a wall of national championships, and we're looking at the national championship wall, and I look just to the right of it, and you see the Team USA jerseys right beside it. So you look at the amount of importance put on that by people who've been in the game and who are so respected in the game. You can tell how much that means to them, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Being able to represent your country is just a special thing, and I think for any prospective player looking to make that decision moving forward, it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. I think even from a coaching standpoint, if you have the opportunity to get involved, this is something that it absolutely will help elevate your career from a fundamental standpoint, from a teaching standpoint, but also from an experience standpoint, because Butch, what you're saying is it sounds like a different level of experience and a really special one at that.
Well, I've been listening to the national anthem for 50 years. I come from a family where my father, he fought in 3 wars. He was a warrior. My mother was an emergency room nurse. You couldn't get any more patriotic than my family. And anytime I wear that USA jersey and I hear the national anthem, you start reflecting and you tear up and you start thinking about everybody who's made it possible and why you're there and what you're representing. And even when I scout, I'll be in Arizona, it'll be 115 degrees, and I'm literally sweating into my socks. I appreciate every moment and every opportunity that I'm given to do that, and I take it very serious, because I've always said USA Baseball, it's the greatest travel team on the planet, and we're in the gold medal business, and I would hate to think that I looked away and missed a kid that could help us win a gold medal. And I know that my friends in USA Baseball, they all take it very, very serious. And we've had some knockdown, drag out meetings that go until 2 a.m. arguing over players and things like that. But we all have that one goal.
That's awesome. Well, Butch, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. This has been an absolute blast. Special thank you to the Baseball Blue Book Network who have partnered with this show. If you haven't checked out their app yet, it's free. You'll have access to recruits, coaches, events. You'll be able to find out the schedules and dates for tournaments that are being hosted by groups like USA Baseball. Again, a special shout out to Valley Sports too, for sponsoring this episode. If you're interested, there's a link in the description for 10% off. You'll be able to get access to their training gloves and other equipment. And again, thank you so much, Butch. This has been an absolute pleasure. And whenever we get a chance to talk, I'm down. That is so much fun hearing from you.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate what you do by trying to spread the game, because we're guardians of the game, and we got to pass it on, and there's a right way to do it. And you can have fun and play right and do things solid. And you doing this, taking time out of your schedule to do this and spread the word, I'm humbled that you allowed me to be part of it.
Thank you, Butch. And again, thank you to the listeners. We'll see you next time.